Now, staying with that story, former Johannesburg mayor and ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba says the fire in the Joburg CBD on Thursday highlights the country's lawlessness and the impact this has on job creation. 76 people were killed as the blaze swept through the building. The building had been abandoned but was being occupied by homeless people. At this stage, none of the authorities are saying why the building was even occupied. But Mashaba says such a disaster is as a result of the breakdown of the rule of law. He joins me now in studio. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Mashaba. We do appreciate it. I did speak to you very soon after this incident on Thursday, but there was a lot going on, and I want to go a little bit deeper into this conversation because there's so much criticism as to who's actually supposed to take responsibility, why we have over 600 buildings in the inner city that have been hijacked, that have been abandoned, and you have situations like this where people move in. I want you to tell me about this specific building. Were you aware of it when you were the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, and did you highlight it as a problematic one?
Not really specifically this one. It is impossible when you're dealing with over 600 buildings to identify one. Obviously, I think as a mayor, you get the reports of all the hijacked buildings. What I'm aware of was a clinic not far in the area that MMC Dr. Palazzi at the time closed because of safety measures, and obviously at the time we were not aware personally that there was one of those 600, because I had a list of over 600 buildings in the inner city. But however, as you are aware, in the 3 years, though there was a lot of resistance and pushback around this inner city rejuvenation project. By the time I left in 3 years, we had already managed to take back 154 of these buildings, giving them to the private sector through council approved. It's not something that we did in dark rooms. We did it openly. And I had committed, anyone can go into your archives, I had committed that during my tenure, I want to release a minimum of 100 buildings a year, because we were sitting in the city of Johannesburg at the time with over 300,000 housing backlog. Some of our people on the housing list since 1995, 1996. So we were under pressure. And housing, as you are aware, is not the competency of the municipality. Municipality gets grants from national government through the province. And if you look at our budget in the city of Johannesburg, the most you can, the number of houses you can build, these RDP houses, 2,000. That's the most you can build when you take out corruption. Yeah. So on the 1st of December 2016, during my 100 days in office, that's when I felt, let me obviously take the opportunity to share with people of South Africa how I intend addressing housing, because to rely on RDP housing, 2,000 houses a year, there's just no way that will ever progress. I said, we have this hijacked, derelict, abandoned buildings. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa allows you as government to expropriate these properties and buildings, as long as you are doing them for public good. As much as there was pushback, I really pushed back myself. I'm not the kind of person to be distracted when I have a good cause.
Let me ask you why you think there was pushback, because you know, there's been a lot of engagement around why this has continued. So you were definitely on an effort. You pushed to deal with these buildings, but you know, the messaging now from a lot of these officials is that there's court action, the city is being litigated, you need to provide alternative accommodation or housing within the 6-kilometer radius. Is that something you also experienced when you went on?
Well, I experienced that, but I think for me, Heidi, and people of South Africa, the biggest challenge in the situation is the capture of our criminal justice system. I'm sure you remember very well, I made a noise on numerous occasions why our law enforcement agencies were refusing to prosecute the kingpins of these hijacked buildings. We knew them, we provided the names, but unfortunately prosecution was not there. On numerous occasions when I had an opportunity to speak to the media, like right now, I will say to South Africa, can big metros like the city of Johannesburg be given the authority to have our own prosecutorial teams? We can have our own prisons, because we are not getting the support of the police. And why there was reluctance to prosecute the kingpins? Unfortunately, some of our senior politicians are involved.
Yeah, I actually want to get to that about government officials actually being involved in these hijacked buildings, because we're hearing a lot from the people who stayed inside those buildings saying, you know, we were being bullied, we were being harassed, we were being told that we have to pay, some instances, 1,000 Rand rent or even more for, I mean, you've been in these hijacked buildings. They take a one-bedroom and there's 20 people inside there.
Yeah, just for a bed, you pay 1,000, 1,002
Yes.
at the time, with no services whatsoever. Some of them obviously had illegal connections. Some of them did not have anything, including no ablution facilities. But unfortunately, what could people do? They had nowhere to go, and these people were taking advantage of them. And our law enforcement agencies, from the police, from the prosecutors, no interest whatsoever.
So many would say, and you said this to me on Thursday as well, that this is a ticking time bomb, and this is only the beginning of what is to come from these hijacked buildings. The minister in the presidency was also there on Thursday, and she's received a lot of backlash for a statement she said. She said it's not government's responsibility to provide housing for illegal immigrants. Do you agree with that statement?
But when did they start taking that position? Because when I was the mayor, in fact, the ANC as a political party laid a criminal charge against me with the South African Human Rights Commission when I raised the issue of undocumented foreign nationals in these buildings, because I led a lot of these raids at the middle of the night. And I used to say to South Africa that up to 80% of the people we found in these buildings were undocumented foreign nationals. By making the statement, they said, no, I'm feeling xenophobia. But these were facts. I mean, they had some of these NGOs, some of them calling themselves so-called human rights lawyers, attacking me and so forth. But
look, Mr. Mashaba, the reality is that as much as it might not be government's responsibility, according to the minister in the presidency, to provide accommodation for illegal immigrants, what do you do in a situation like this one? Say now that there was a raid in this building before the fire took place. There were women and children in that building. What do you do? Do you just kick them out on the street? What must be done to also help them?
When you have a problem, you've got to relook at the source. In the first place, why did we open our borders to everyone in the first place and did nothing about it until Herman Mashaba raised it in 2016? I mean, if you look at our porous borders, it's one of our biggest challenge. But when you raise it at the time, when I raised it at the time, I was obviously attacked. When our own people don't have houses, our own students, all the universities in the city of Joburg had numerous meetings with me appealing for assistance for students, proper student accommodation, living in the rough areas where they used to be robbed, the laptops taken, sometimes even actually raped, at night. So these are challenges that were really quite concerning. Unfortunately, as I've said in that article yesterday, it's because of the breakdown of the rule of law. Let me give you another ticking time bomb, which I took the media on a tour, I think in 2018, when Sasol and Transnet brought something to my attention to say, Mr. Mashaba, Mayor Mashaba, please help us. We have these zamazamas using explosives next to our petrol and gas lines. And he says, Mr. Mashaba, if something happens, one day South Africa will disappear. And it says we've been complaining for many years with national government. We're not getting any help whatsoever. please, because you see we've got interest, can you take us through? So when I asked them to take me through, I invited the media. You are the media, spend the whole day with us going from one place to the other. You know, next to the, they were saying to me when we visited the place next to FNB Stadium, they said, you know, that's where some of the big pipes are. They said, you can imagine 80, 90,000 people in that stadium. He says, there's zamazamas where there are irresponsible explosives. If something happens, that stadium and the 90,000 people, we won't recognize them. So we are sitting on a very serious situation. One of the health inspectors, a senior person, a doctor, raised the issue on one of the raids about this counterfeits, expired goods. He says, these people are bringing goods into this country, food. He says, we are going to face a major health hazard. He says, please, I work for the Department of Health, but unfortunately we're not getting any attention. Please, Mr. Mashaba, don't give up on this matter. I said, no, I can't give up. Giving up is not an option for me. But unfortunately in 2019 when ANC and DA wanted to remove me as a mayor, that I had no choice because they were going to remove me anyway. You know, so I then left. It was a very sad moment for me, and it is now even more painful now to see this.
What's happened? Yes, I want to go back to the issue of providing alternative accommodation, and I know you mentioned the fact that why was this even allowed to happen in the first place? Speaking about our porous borders, and obviously there's a bigger issue here at play that needs a national government attention and intervention. But SERI and other NGOs have come out to say that the city did not provide alternative accommodation or a plan to house these people that were occupying these buildings. Because the reality is, Mr. Mashaba, that a lot of these people do come into the country to survive. It's not even about to have a better life. It's about survival. Because where they come from, and I'm speaking on what I've seen in the last 2 to 3 days, you were the mayor at the time of this refurbishment. When there were these evictions, did you as the mayor ever provide this alternative accommodation? Because our constitution does say that we should provide alternative accommodation when there is any form of eviction or whatever it might be. As the mayor, what was your role in that providing alternative accommodation when you did take back these buildings?
Well, I think the thing is, you know, when you take back these buildings, there's a process you follow. Firstly, we had to identify the buildings. And then once you identify them, take them through to council to allow me as a mayor to advertise them to the private sector, to give us proposals, to say here are 154 buildings, tell us how much you're going to invest, how many jobs you're going to create, how many units. All this process takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. I was at a stage where now 154 properties were already awarded to the private sector for development. We had already gone through that process, and one of the commitments we made to the developers was that us as a city will take the responsibility during the construction side period. We will obviously find out alternative accommodation for them. Unfortunately, as I say, I had to leave before seeing this project come into fruition.
So there was never a time where you evicted people or you had taken over the city, reclaimed a building back, and you needed to evict people to provide alternative?
No, look, you can't look. What I'm on record to say, look, we can't operate in a haphazard manner where you identify a property, you take people out. And then you start the process of advertising, looking for private sector investment. My strategy and the plan in writing was that let's give these properties, go through this process like I've explained to you. And then once, obviously, the private sector has given us the proposal, us as a city will take the responsibility to find out alternative accommodation. So
but you didn't get to that stage as mayor.
We did not, unfortunately, get to that stage. And then, for some reason, the new ANC administration came into power, and I believe what they said to the officials, they says, drop this Mashaba project.
Let's speak about now. I mean, you are the leader of ActionSA. What do you think is going to happen moving forward? I believe that the MMC for public safety is currently on an operation. in some of these hijacked buildings. He's been very vocal about really wanting to deal with this, but saying that he's facing litigation left, right and centre. But what happens now? Do you believe that there is a political will, because there's politics at play here as well, to sort this out? Because that's not the only building that's at risk. There are many other buildings.
Lots.
Yeah.
Look, I think, Heidi, as South Africans, let us for once become adults and deal with matters as adults with a little bit of brains. Look, there's just no way, as far as I'm concerned, we are going to resolve this question of hijacked buildings and the breakdown of the rule of law in South Africa for as long as we've got this current government in place. Forget about it. It is like right now when you have challenges with prisons. Do you think when you have security breaches in prison, do you think can you invite Thabo Bester to be part of the team that must help you to close the loophole? So ANC can't be the part of the solution on solving the country's problem, because they're the ones who created those problems. What the MMC, whoever it is that doing the raids today, no, they're just really doing it for you and the cameras. Tomorrow they're forgotten, because if they're serious about it, they've got to then bring in the walks, they've got to bring the prosecuting authorities. Unfortunately, their cadres, their comrades, are going to be the ones found wanting. So I can tell you this is just really a show. Nothing will happen, because it's going to involve, do you remember what the Minister Dlamini said about smaller skeletons? I can tell you these are not smaller skeletons. These are huge elephants that we are dealing with.
So as ActionSA, what will you be doing?
Well, I think we need to really bring back the rule of law, professionalize the police, give them independence. We don't have a situation where the police are captured by political consideration. We need to bring back the Chapter 9 institutions like the Scorpions as a matter of agency. We need specialized courts to deal with this matter, to really bring all South Africans, and I call on all South Africans, we must obviously stop this situation of obviously really dividing along racial lines. Let's all of us as South Africans tackle this matter. The retired magistrate lawyers from all races and background, let us all fight this. Policemen and women who have now been retired because they did not want to really be part of this nonsense of corruption, they've left, they're in the private sector. Please come back. Let's really fight this thing together. I can tell you, we can win it, but it's not something that can happen overnight. But one thing that I'm convinced about is that the first order of business is the removal of this current government. They can't be part of the solution to this country's problem, because they're the ones who created this mess.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much for your time this evening, Mr. Mashaba. We do appreciate it. That was ActionSA leader Herman Mashaba. And I just want to draw some experience from what I covered in the past 2 days. I've never, as a journalist, seen anything like that, and surely something's got to give. And the tragedy in all of this is that we have a very reactive government. So when a tragedy like this hits, then suddenly there's some sort of reaction. When this problem has been sitting for probably 2 decades, 20 years?
Over 20 years.
Exactly. So this is clearly a problem that's been sitting for a very long time. And interestingly enough, Lindiwe Zulu, who's the Social Development Minister, yesterday said a lot of what has happened over the past 2 days in the inner city should be blamed on apartheid, yet the ANC has been in power for almost 3 decades. So that's just an interesting assessment, being on the ground and having seen what's going on.